So I got the pleasure of reading through The Talisman by Stephen King and Peter Straub recently, and I mean that, it was a pleasure. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. Not quite from beginning to end, but from about one third of the way in, all the way up to the end, I was pretty well invested. A couple of slow moments, as is common with Stephen King, and as I suspect with Peter Straub. I really liked it, despite its problems. It was a pretty large book. The copy I read was like 730 some odd pages, 735 pages, I think. That's about 250,000 words, and I looked it up. I don't do audiobooks, but it's about 28, yeah, it takes about 28 hours to listen through the audiobook on this. So it's a bit of a journey, it's a good journey. There's not much of a plot to the book aside from, Jack has to get across America and the territories, the flip side version of America, to go find the talisman to save his mom who has cancer. Pretty fucking standard, pretty standard hero's journey. The main plot is really nothing more than just a MacGuffin. Just get a reason for Jack to have to make this gigantic journey, because that's what this book is about. It's about the journey. It is not about the destination. The destination was fine. The end of the book was enjoyable. I liked it. But it's still much more about the middle of the book. Man, I ignored work hardcore just to get a little bit more reading done here. Shouldn't have done that. Well, yes, I should have. Fuck that, man. I should have. I ignored a little bit of work to make sure that I got extra reading in every day just on the Talisman. It was quite fun. So I'm very familiar with Stephen King's work. He has done like 70 books or 80 books or something like that, and I've read, I don't know, I want to say about 30 or maybe 40 of them. Quite a number of his books I've read. Only read one Peter Straub book. Now, here in The Talisman, I could definitely feel a lot of Stephen King's writing. I could feel a lot of his influence in it. And given the one book that I've read by Peter Straub so far, I felt like I could also feel a little bit of him in there as well, although there's no real telling. I have to read some more Straub before I actually know what he feels like when he's reading to me. When I'm reading his words. Could you imagine Peter Straub just like sneaking into your window late at night and cracking open a book and just whispering into your ear? I don't know. What the fuck does Peter Straub sound like? I have no idea. I was very hesitant to read The Talisman for a very long time. I tried it twice. I tried it once when I was like 13 or 14 years old, not much older than Jack was in the book. And then I also tried it when I was in college, I believe. So I would have been 19 or so. I had just gotten into college. I think it might have been like the second or third book I tried to read while I was there. Anyway, didn't finish it, didn't care for it at the time. But I eventually decided to come back and give it a shot again after I read Shadowland. I don't know why the fuck I picked up Shadowland exactly. I just happened to be in the bookstore and it was sitting there. I was like, all right, fine, I'll pick that up. And, why not? And I picked it up and I read it and I enjoyed it enough. I still don't know why. That book was amazingly boring, although the cool fantasy stuff was interesting. After I read Shadowland, I was like, fuck it. You know what? I'm itching to read some more Stephen King. Plus, I wouldn't mind trying some more Peter Straub. Let's try The Talisman again. And I was very, very happy that I did. There are a bunch of characters in this book. There are a bunch of characters in this book. There's Jack himself, 12-year-old kid, having to, hike across America. He has to get across America because he's got to go get that talisman to save his mom. Jack himself was a fairly, he was okay. He was okay as a protagonist. I enjoyed watching him. He was I wouldn't call him exactly a goody two-shoes because that's not correct. There's a couple of times where he, it feels like he's tempted a little bit, at least. Crappy thoughts enter his mind occasionally, at least. He's not a knight in shining armor, per se, but he's close enough to it. I enjoyed Jack just fine enough to be able to read through the book and find the stuff that I really did enjoy, such as Wolf. Wolf was the best fucking character in this entire book. He was my very favorite character. Jack meets Wolf, a half werewolf. I mean, he's pretty much... Oh my god, he's just a werewolf, and he gets dragged over into our world and from the territories, and he is just so frightened, and he doesn't like our world, and I mean, hell, I don't even like our world, and I can sympathize with Wolf, and my god, he was so kind, and he was so loyal to Jack, and he was just such a nice guy to Jack, and man, he could fuck someone up if he really needs to, because He's a werewolf and all that. But, man, goddamn, I tell you what, Wolf, I loved every second that Wolf was on the page. I fucking loved Sloat. Morgan Sloat, or Morgan of Orris in the Territories. Man, I don't know why he was so particularly memorable for me. Stephen King has written a ton of characters that I remember, a ton of bad guys that I remember and revere pretty well. I mean, there's, of course, your Randall Flagg and your Crimson King, the big bad guys of, like, the whole everything. And then you got your Jim Rennies and your fucking Steve Kemps and all of the other really shitty, evil characters he's written before. But, I don't know, there's something about Sloat that just... I don't know, he's just gross. Stephen King and Peter Straub pulling together really just made a very tactile kind of a bad guy. He doesn't really even show up that much throughout the book, but my goodness, it just... God, I love to hate Sloat. Fuck you, Morgan Sloat, and I love every second of it. Morgan Sloat's kid is also in the book, Richard Sloat. Richard Sloat is Jack's best friend, and Richard is a whiny bitch. I wanted him to die for the first, 100 pages that I had to read about him. It was just like, oh my God, Richard sucks. This is the only friend that Jack has really had throughout his life. This guy, that sucks. Richard just, oh man, why? Richard was one of the weaker points of the book when he's introduced, but by the end, he was bearable. He was bearable. Speedy Parker was one of the characters I haven't brought up yet. I liked him. He's the guy that helps Jack get over into the Territories at first, gives him some magic juice to help him go on over and switch and flip over to the Terror side. Fucking jeez. Lily Kavanaugh was Jack's mom. She was nice and snappy at a couple of points. I didn't particularly like her as a character, but, it's fine. She was okay. She wasn't in the book too much, so I'm happy about that. Even though the whole quest was about trying to save her life, we didn't have to deal with her that much, which, that's kind of nice, because I didn't care for Lily that much. Sunlight Gardener he gives this sermon in the middle of the book that is just Sunlight Gardener as a character is way over the top, and it's pretty enjoyable for it. Buddy Parkins was a small, another character that I can recall. There wasn't too much that was there. He's just like this dude that has a weird fixation on Jack. They could have chopped this guy out. He didn't have to be here. Yeah, and then there was the whole, Snowball, the guitar player guy. Snowball is Speedy Parker, but, maybe not. I don't know, it was just a weird section. I'm not certain why they chose to do that. Why couldn't it have just been Speedy? Why did it couldn't it have just been a completely different character? Why have this weird it is Speedy, it's not Speedy thing? It didn't stop me from reading the book. It was just weird, and it never really led much of anywhere. There were a bunch of characters in this book. There were dozens of characters in this book. I mean, we didn't talk about any of the people from Oatley or any of the people on the Territory side, really, all of the people that inhabit the place, like Anders and all of that. There were a number of moments, however, that I did want to point out and just specifically highlight because they were really fucking fun and I loved them. And anybody who has happened to have read the books, I hope you can also just go down the nostalgia lane with me for a second, because these were some of my very favorite moments from the book. Okay, first of all, I think my favorite part was that fucking spider at the end. It was just so out of left field. I don't know why the fuck that spider was there. I don't know why the hell it could speak to Jack. I don't know why. I mean, obviously because it was in the Black Hotel. I do know why, but it was so good. I loved it. It just... I just sit there and I think about it. I smile about it just because that spider lives rent-free in my head every night. And I just have to smile a little bit about it. I fucking hate spiders. Spiders scare the shit out of me, as they usually scare the shit out of most everybody. But I just loved it. It was so fucking funny and hilarious, but also deeply terrible. Could you imagine just walking through your house and then just all of a sudden a little spider comes on down and just starts fucking yelling at you? What did it sound like to you, man? What did it sound like to you? I really kind of do want to know, because in my head it was this very high-pitched, squeaky little... I loved it. I loved the Oatley Tunnel as well. Okay, I can't say that I loved the Oatley Tunnel, but I did enjoy it. There's been more frightening tunnel sequences that I've read before. The Lincoln Tunnel in The Stand was, for instance, really fucking good. And, this one was pretty all right. I remember Jack having to learn about the territory's money. Jack has to go in and, he's fucking hungry as shit, and he has to learn how to use this money that he has. Because, when he transports over into the territories, the money that he's got in his pocket turns into territories money, and he can still use it. And there are these weird things. They describe them as like little wooden knuckles. And man, in my head, that's just a beautiful little way to picture that kind of stuff. I mean, not actually beautiful. I'm being sardonic here. The fact that they called the money knuckles, just little wooden knuckles, was interesting. I don't know. It seems impractical as a way of keeping money, but you know what? Who am I to judge the territories? The Flying Men were very interesting to see. There was no reason for them to be in the book at all, but I'm happy that they were kept, actually, all together. It was just an odd little section to have him sit there and watch these guys just fly off. You jump off this tower and start flying around. It was nice to stop and smell the roses for a second, because that's very much what this is. That's what all of these little parts are, has just been stopping and smelling the roses. This is very much a book about the journey, not the destination. And all of these little points along the journey are just so fun to see before we get to the destination, which, again, in my opinion, was rather satisfying. I do know that this does have some sort of intrinsic link to the Dark Tower. This almost felt like Dark Tower Jr., and I really liked The Talisman. I'm not going to say it's one of my favorite books I've ever read, but man, it's definitely been one of the better ones that I've read recently. I have slogged through quite a number of books that were either not the greatest things in the world, or got through some books that were particularly good, just not exactly my cup of tea. For example, recently I read A Farewell to Arms, and I didn't care for it. I fucking hated it, actually. But that's a discussion for another day. As of right now, B+, A- on The Talisman by Peter Straub, Stephen King. It was good. I enjoyed it. Yeah. Surprise, I'm going to sell you shit. I've got The Circus, an American fantasy, which is my horror novel about scary-ass clowns and capitalism and how your soul is going to get taken from you because everybody wants what you have. Just like The Talisman, it also features its own other world, if you will, a flipped over, fucked up quasi-interpretation of America. And then I also have Portraits in Bloodlines. This is 23 short stories. I wrote half of them. My father wrote the other half of them. It's mostly horror stories in here, although there's a little slipstream, a little science fiction, a little bit of everything in here, including a little fantasy, urban fantasy specifically, inside here. A little bit of everything for everyone. Go read some books. Like, for instance, I recently read For Whom the Belt... No, I didn't. I read... Yeah, so I fucking... How the hell do I want to say that? What's the... I'm using the inverse. Oh, God. I'm a writer, and I can't remember, the most basic of fucking writing terminology sometimes. I've read it. I tried to read it. Yeah, I was quite hesitant on the